Hello, my name's Stephanie Toman. I run the ICDL programme and I'm running some of these demonstration online lectures for you with regard to Advanced Word. It's also known as A33Com. These series of videos that I'm going to do on this section is to do with collaborative editing, document security and templates. All of these sections are in the manual and they've got the page numbers, etc., with the revision materials that follow. Most people, though, will do the lectures and then they will go on to do the week revision exercises. And I'll cover these in a separate video, and it will be on questions 21 to 25. So first of all, let's go through the demonstration of the lectures. So if you make sure that you've got the lecture materials for week 4, sections 7, 8 and 9. So when you open them, they should look like this. They look differently. Then you may have opened up the wrong, downloaded the wrong folders from Ola. So make sure you've got the right ones. So if we open up the collaborative editing to begin with, the first one's so simple, it's regarding comments. So obviously you're not going to have a whole test question and giving you marks on comments, but it is something that's covered with a number of other things. So a comment, as you know, in the review tab, you can right click and do new comments, or you can do a new comment that way, and then you pop your info in it. If I was doing a comment on here, I could right click and I could do new comment that way. There, and if I wanted to edit this one, I could right click and delete the comment, or in this one, delete the comment, or just go in and edit, put some more in, and that one I can delete. And you can also delete there as well. If you've got a number of comments in a document, then if you click in one in the exam, just to highlight them, you can drop that down and you can delete all comments in the document, so you don't need to have to do them one at a time. Okay, so there's not really much more to comments. When the comment's in there, you can right click and you can mark comment done, delete and edit comment. Okay, so really that's about it. I'm not going to save that, we're going to come back out again. And we're going into tracking, number 2. So there's an area in Word whereby you can track documents. So there's 2 sides to the tracking changes and accepting and rejecting them. So we go into the review tab. If you make changes and track those changes using this feature here, then what you can do is you can, somebody can send, you're the project manager, you send off a couple of documents to different people that specialise in different subject areas. They make their changes but track them using this feature, because if they just change things, you would never be able to keep up with what they might have done. So by turning the track changes on, when you make a change to something, if I decide to delete that, it shows what's happened, and there's different ways of seeing that tracking as well. And there's markups using balloons, as it's showing at the moment. In revision in line, you can see it actually happening there. And you can show only particular things if that's what you want to do, people that might be reviewing it. And you can show the original when it started and then the markups according to what people have done. So you might decide to take that paragraph out, and you can see that it's deciding that I'm taking on board what I'm putting. But I may, as project manager, I may not be happy with what that person's done. Okay, so that's tracking it. In the exam, they may ask you to track something, so they may ask you to delete that heading and track it. So the tracking wouldn't be on, it'd be looking like that. You'd make sure you clicked it on straight on top of it, do what they ask you to do, and then they say ensure that no tracking, no further tracking is shown, so you turn it off. Okay. If on another part of the question you get asked to accept so many different changes and reject something, and you go to this feature, you might say accept and move to next, and it might ask you to reject and move to next. So you're rejecting that, you accept the first one. And what you have to do in the exam is run through the process till you get to the end, and then you'll get the question right. So if we close this, to that, And let's have a look at the tracking and accepting, just as a process. Okay, so there's some tracking going on in here. You can see them. You can also see the bar there. So if I go to the review and I accept and move on to the first one, and then accept and move to the next, you can see it's moving through. I might reject and move to the next, and reject and move to the next. So make sure that you do what they need you to do in the exam, just like that. And then if it says ensure no further tracking takes place or it's shown, then you turn the tracking off. And if I do something, it's not on, it won't show what I've done. Okay? So it's quite straightforward tracking. So one side of the coin is tracking, making sure that you track all the changes you made, and then the project manager or the owner of the document can decide what they keep and what they don't keep. Takes us on to another area called compare and merge. So if we open up the review document together, make sure your files are on the desktop or somewhere easy to get to, because we're going to bring in some of those other files in that folder through. So in the review tab again, we have this compare and merge. So what will happen is you've made changes to your document and sent it to me, and I've accepted those changes. Someone else has made some changes to another one I've accepted, and I've ended up with two documents, and I have my original document. So what I want to do now is compare your documents into mine, okay? Or even just one, it doesn't matter. So we go to compare and merge. I find my document, which is the review. That's it up there if you can't remember, or if you're in the exam. There's my document, and we're going to bring in one of the documents I've accepted. So I'm going to navigate. It doesn't come up in the drop down, unfortunately. You have to navigate to it. Now in the exam, you'll be navigating to the Z drive. I'm navigating to my desktop, and you may be navigating to your desktop where you've saved your files. So I'm going into the 332 and the lecture materials, and we're in the section week 4, section 7, 8 and 9. And the collaborative editing, quite a long way to go. See, I could have a few documents here that I want to bring in, but I'm going to do in R1 to begin with. So double click on it. There it is, that there. They may ask you to put something into the label. Once the document drops in here, it will come up available for you to change. And notice when we navigated the documents, we navigated using that folder. Now, usually when you go into this feature, it looks like this. Luckily, it's come up with more, but in the exam guarantee, that isn't dropped down, because one of the things they say in the exam is to show changes in the original document, and it tends to be somewhere like that. So you change it to original document to meet that requirement, okay, and then yes, and then you'll see that both have been, I can take that one off, we don't need to see that. You can see there's your review 4, there's review 4, there's your revised document. Okay, and this is the compared document to the original. All right, so remember, review, compare and merge, go into there, make sure this feature is dropped down. You've got the document that they're talking about in the exam there. You've got the one they want you to bring in and compare and merge, and then they may ask you to label and make sure that it is an original document before you OK. No more complicated than that. It does look a bit odd. If you want to play with these and have a go yourselves, you can bring in different ones and see what they look like. Okay, moving on to the document security area, number 8. So if we look at this area, this is the section 8. There's different ways of protecting a Word document. There's password protected and restricted protection. So the password protected for articles, and I've put the word open there. So if we click on this and it comes up with a password, let's type in lowercase open. And that's allowed us to get into the document from the outside. So it's protected from getting in at all with open. There are two areas within the password protection. There's an open and a modify area. And we need to think about those. So the way that we would do it, if we go to File, and then we go to Save As and Browse. This brings up the dialog box for us to be able to use the tool in here. Before I go any further, if we go back and I go to File, I don't want you to take this route. A lot of people are taking this route because it's what they're doing every day. It's quick, simple, but the thing is it's not the one you use in the exam. In the exam, there's two areas that we need to go to. So we use the Save As, Browse. Then we get here, we get to the Tools and General Options. So that we have a password to open area and a password to modify area. So if I wanted to change this from open, I'd delete that password, and I want a password for modify. Just for simplicity, let's type modify in the modify area. Okay, pop it in again. Okay, and save. Close it, reopen it, and remember we've used the password modify. If you make a spelling mistake, and it obviously won't open, so I nearly did. Another thing to be aware of in the exam, sometimes it is case sensitive. So sometimes I've seen people putting the right password in and their cap locks on. So it just keeps coming up going, no, no, no. So be really careful that you do it exactly as they ask you to do and make sure your cap lock's not on. So that's password protection from the outside. So remember, File, Save As, Browse to bring your dialog box up. Then you've got Tools and General Options, and then you could remove all passwords. You're saving it back through again and again, and in the exam it will come up and say, shall I override the existing document? And you do, because it's different, it's been password protected. So this one now, if I close it and I open it, there's no password on it. Make sure your passwords are meaningful. If you do it in work, please don't lock down all the documents, because your manager or your boss may not be very happy when you've forgotten the password. So be very careful how you use it, and use it in situations where it's quite paramount. Okay, but don't password protect absolutely everything just because you can. With regard to the part protection, it's slightly different. It's about restricting editing, and you can find it in the Review tab. So if we pop there and we look at restrict editing right at the end there, and click on there, and it brings up a task pane. So in the exam, if they're asking you to restrict something with regard to filling in forms, comments, tracking, read only, it's not about restricting the whole document from being opened. So it's not about password protecting the whole document from the outside. You can be asked to use possible passwords on this one as well. It's always going to be the editing restrictions in the exam. That's one thing we can be sure of. It's part of the syllabus. And you can see those things I just mentioned: track changes, comments, filling in forms, no changes, read only. We'll be using this again when we come to doing filling in forms, online forms. So you would pick one. Let's pick filling in forms, just because I mentioned it. Then when you start protection, you could be asked to put a password in. So let's put in protect with no capitals or both lowercase, and OK. And now it's stopped. You've got to stop protection. So in order to open it back up again, you're expected to know the password. So if someone else comes and tries to get at your restricted document, then you know how to fix that. So that's part protection. And you'll see that when you do a filling in a form, when you do an online form, you're the editor and you protect it, keep it locked down, and then the people it gets sent to use it, but they cannot edit it. So that's the point in password protection. So you can see here, it's all written on there about how to control it, but that's the process that you go through. So there's a restrict protected in the review. Remember, bring it up that way. And when it comes to this one, to password protect it, just as a quick recap, you would be going the File, Save As, and Browse area. And then that should prompt you to remember Tools, General Options. Okay. close that down. Another little area, not much in this one, it's called templates, and it's very simple. Let's open one up in here. Let's open up the area and let's have a look at the types as we go along here. So you can see that this is a template, .x, and this is a template, but this is a Word document. However, when I open up a template, let's open up the second one, template. It then becomes a document, as you can see up here. So what they're getting at sometimes in the exam is they ask you to open up a template and save it as a template. So if you did something to this, for example, if we did design and we put in a watermark, for example, oops, custom. Let's put confidentially in and we'll do it in red. Okay. That now has to be saved again as a template into the Z drive, because sometimes when you do templates here, sometimes this changes. As you can see there, it's gone to custom office templates. So things to be aware of are, one, you are changing it once you've opened a template, it becomes a document. And when you change it to a template, make sure it's still going into the Z drive. So a couple of things to watch out for, that they're testing you on not what you're doing to the template, which is usually quite simple. The other thing to remember if we close this, the other one, the standard one here, when we open that up, they'll ask you to sometimes create a template to a blank document. I'm just going to take this off. So you've got a blank document, you do Control and A, and you can see that that's taken effect. They might ask you to do a template with Arial black. Let's do it in size 18 in red, and then save as a template. So I file save as. So I've applied some things to it, browse. I'll pop it on my desktop just for ease, and I'm going to call this standard. And I'm going to change it to a template. Make sure it's on my desktop still when I do that, remember. Let's bring it back down to desktop. Okay, and I save that. So when I start typing, so when I reopen it from the desktop, the one I saved as standard and that template, then it will continue, even though it's changed into a Word document. It will take on board what I've done. So this is a typical example of the test questions as well. Is one might ask you to make some particular formatting changes in a template, save it as a template, and the other one is talking about making a change and making sure it resaves as a template. And that's it really.